Atmosfear by Nobody. Chapter 4. The New Town. I woke up with a similar benediction on my lips as the one I had made before falling asleep. Allahu Akbar. Back in Finland at this time of year, it would have been pitch dark no matter what hour I would open my eyes, as the polar night had wrapped its funeral wreath over the whole country. But in here, I felt like being kissed on the eyelids by Great Ra himself. The bright sunlight stirred me gently back into consciousness, and I wasn't put off from my pleasant mood even by the sight of a big fat cockroach scuttling across the floor. I promptly hopped into my slippers and squashed the vile intruder with my foot, flushing his mortal remains down the toilet afterwards. "Rasta!" my partner hollered through the door. "Are you dancing in there or what?" "Just killing some bugs," I answered and opened the door. "Yeah, man, this is not Finland," he said with a grin. "Now, we get that SIM card to your phone today?" That would be great." I looked at my black jeans lying in the corner that were coated with dust from the journey of the previous days. I also want to try to buy new clothes somewhere. All I have is that, because I was so stupid not to bring anything else. "Wait," Mohammed said, and went over to dig into his backpack. "Before that, you can use my stuff from here." Like a true guardian angel, he handed me clean jeans, a shirt, as well as a pair of stylish green sneakers. Once I had them on, we locked the front door of our apartment and made our way past the open doors of the reception office. There were a few guys lounging about inside, one of whom came over to greet us. He was a pleasant and soft-spoken, though built like a prize fighter, which befitted his position as the head of hotel security. The peaceable impression was even more pronounced, as the man didn't sport any weapons or even a uniform. He asked if we wanted to have some baked potatoes. Behind him, we could see that the staff were enjoying their lunch around a low table. I declined politely, feeling that I didn't want to cut into their portions, which I supposed to be quite meager to begin with. "Are there many guests here at the moment?" I asked him. "Currently, you are the only ones. But in the weekends, our nightclub is always full of people. It finishes around 3 a.m., but I think you came later than that last night, eh?" He led us around the corner to have a look at the club, a sturdy stone building with colorful hand-painted walls, surrounded by fresh plots of greenery. Across the yard, I saw two little boys engaged in washing clothes with hand soap under a running tap. These, I heard, were employed by the hotel for laundry services, laying the washed clothes neatly on the lawn to dry in the sunlight. I didn't dare to ask whether they had a chance to go to school as well during the day. Once past the main gate of the hotel, we started down the hillside on a dusty sand road, walking past partly collapsed ruins of houses, as well as a few impressive mansions with high walls and private guards posted at the gates. "That guy is big tennis player in Europe," my partner said, and pointed at one kingly manor that had 3 brand-new SUVs parked on the driveway. "Cool," I said. "Sadly enough, just a stone's throw away from it, stood a pitiful little stone hut of some other family that was flanked by a shoddy, stinking wooden outhouse. "There is so fucking rich people here," my partner said while following my gaze, "and also so fucking poor people." It was a polarity that was rarely so pronounced in Finland, where we did still have bread lines and homeless people rummaging through trash cans next to heated parking halls that were filled with sports cars. But what I had never seen back home were the freely roaming goats and chickens in the open sandy terrain that was interspersed only by a few dry bushes and palm trees. "Those animals belong to different people in the town," Mohammed explained. "You see, they are marked that way." It was true. Each animal had a colorful piece of string tied to them, thus indicating a specific owner by its color. "People don't steal them?" I asked, "even though they're so poor?" "No, man. Everybody here watch these animals. You get in trouble fast that way if somebody see you steal some shit. And the goat and chicken know to go home before sun goes down. They are smart." The sky was clear blue, mixed slightly gray with exhaust fumes, but I could still see through the smoky veil a magnificent mountain looming on the other side of the highway that ran below us at the foot of our hill. The mountain was rugged and dry, mostly rocky, unlike the green leviathans I had seen the previous day, but it was still a majestic sight to behold, especially to one who had been born in the flat, monotonous plains of Finland. I pointed it out to my partner, and he told me it was called Kibidi. "We can go visit it one day," he said. "My friend is a tour guide. He can take us there." "Sounds good," I said, not knowing how much sweat and pain would be needed in order to reach its peak. We passed motorcyclists and pedestrians on our way down, all of whom greeted us politely. My partner explained that this was part of local cordiality, which I found very welcomed compared to the cold reserve of the Finns back home. As the sandy path finally merged into an asphalt road, there stood a small blue guard post at the junction, under which a soldier with his assault rifle was observing the passing traffic. "The army base is that way," my partner said, and pointed up the road, where I could see an antiquated military truck struggling uphill, loaded to the brim with soldiers who hung on to its sides. "That's where I buy my land for my house also." "Is that so?" I said nervously. "I guess it must be safe then, huh?" "Yeah, man. Safest place in all Kindia, I'm telling you." I wasn't a big military man myself. In fact, I had rather chosen 6 months of prison time instead of serving in the Finnish army, which was compulsory to all males of sound health. To my relief, we did not take the road towards those training camps of death, but instead made our way towards the main highway that was lined with low cement and wooden huts that served as restaurants, cafes, and shops of different kind. I could see clients sitting in the shades of the terrace, wafting large fans to cool off their large steaming plates of food while engaging in lively conversations. There seemed to be no signs of political trouble in the air, quite the contrary. The people seemed much more relaxed and jovial than what I had seen on a normal day anywhere in Helsinki, where stress and anxiety were the norm. The noon sun was roasting my skin mercilessly by now, and so I turned to my partner with a plea. "Is there any kind of clothes shop here where I could get something to cover my head?" Realizing the urgency of my need, Mohammed led me to a tent by the side of the road, where a man was selling some quite humble second-hand garments. Borrowing a few bills from my partner, I bought a khaki button shirt and wrapped it around my head and neck, ending up resembling a Bedouin, but not minding the amused looks of the bypassers, as it kept my skin from peeling off. We walked over to the same gas station from the previous night. It was now crowded with fruit sellers and clients, haggling over freshly picked oranges and bananas. From these vendors, as well as the moto taxi drivers, I heard calls of "Fauteuil, fauteuil," directed at myself, being the only white person around as far as the eye could see. "Let's go to Cash Automat first," Mohammed said as he hailed us a taxi from the busy highway. "Sure," I said, and climbed in the old, mangled car beside him in the back seat. "Where is that?" "There is a bank in Kindia Center, but we have to be careful they don't cheat us. We go see if the exchange rate is good, then we find something else." "Sure. So how far is the center of Kindia?" About 20 minutes. It's not far off." "That's good," I said, while observing the reckless manner with which our young driver swerved among the ancient trucks, buses, and overloaded cars. "This driving business makes me nervous." "You get used to it," Mohammed said, but then added as an afterthought, "Next time we have to bring our own car so we don't have problem with taxi. These guys charge so fucking much when they see white guy with me." "Not a bad idea at all," I noted, as we started down the wide, dusty asphalt road that went past large plains of rice plots beside dark riverbeds, small mosques, schools, and Christian missionary headquarters. I kept my head out of the open car window once again in order to take in all this fascinating life, bathed in luxurious sunlight. The center of Kindia was packed with cars and pedestrians that slowed our taxi to a crawling pace. The town consisted of narrow streets that were surrounded by 5 or 4-story cement buildings, which now appeared like skyscrapers to me after spending time among the little huts of the suburbs. The taxi dropped us off next to the bank office, which, unsurprisingly, was the most modern and affluent building in the vicinity. It looked like a shining fortress of concrete and steel, protected by soldiers with assault rifles on their backs. My partner had a look at the exchange rates of one of the ATMs on the side of the building and shook his head angrily. "Shit, those bank people try to take all our money. We don't change here. Or, you have euros with you?" "Yes," I said, patting my money belt. "A couple of €100 in cash." "Good," he said, and started walking down the busy street. "Let's go." He led me to a market square where one couldn't make a single step without bumping into a sweaty, jostling body or a loud beeping car, if not an overloaded motorcycle. "Stay behind me," Mohammed ordered, and I held on to his backpack while gripping my phone with my other hand, so as not to make myself too easy prey for some pickpocket. After what seemed an eternity of pushing our way past countless food and clothes vendors, we made it to a row of concrete enclaves that stood side by side like large open garages, each containing different kinds of wares on sale. "These guys change money," my partner said. There were two grim-looking guys sitting on the steps of what appeared to be a cell phone shop. The concrete cavern behind them was piled all the way to the ceiling with cardboard packages that had popular phone brands and pictures printed on them. Dressed in faded, oversized suits and ragged leather shoes, with huge sunglasses down their noses, the duo looked rather comical, but they still acted like they owned the whole street. They gave a bad exchange rate for Mohammed for his money, and even worse for me. A white man pays more because he can afford it. But my partner held my rights. And after a shouting match that included shoving my bills back and forth in their fists and mine, we both got our equal share, in large dirty bundles of francs guinées that were fastened together with rubber bands. "Hello," I said, while I packed this wad of money into my money belt and nodded at a raggedly dressed young man who had stopped in front of me with a small bullhorn under his arm. This device was broadcasting a loud, pre-recorded prayer in Arabic that nearly burst my ears. The boy's eyes were crossed to the opposite sides of his head, and his malformed face and twisted body suggested some horrid genetic disease. "Please, mister," he croaked in French and held out his crooked hand, "in the name of Allah, all-merciful." "Sorry, dude," I responded in English and shut my money belt decisively while turning my head to look away, feeling like a swine for doing so. But I didn't know if giving in to one beggar would set a whole flock of them upon my person. My partner saw all of this and came over to hand a bill of 500 francs guinées to the boy, who thanked him kindly and then hobbled away on his misshapen legs. "Are there many beggars here?" I asked as we started to walk back to the market square. "Not many. Look yourself. You see them much?" I had to admit that I didn't. In fact, there seemed to be far fewer of them than back home in Helsinki. "It looks like only the really sick people beg here," I noted. "There's no drunks or addicts or dealers hustling about." "This is a Muslim country, boy. Remember that. Mostly family take care of the sick people. But sometimes also the family say they have to go ask money, because nothing is free in this world." He handed me a little bag of drinking water that he bought from a handsome young woman who carried a whole bucket full of them on top of her head. She moved about in a quite queenly manner that seemed totally undisturbed by the jostling jumble of people, which almost took me off my feet every other second, though I had nothing on top of my head except my cap. "So, people don't reject the handicapped or the albinos here?" I asked as we edged our way past the tightly packed wooden stalls. "I remember that Salif Keita was kicked out of his house because he was an albino, and they thought he was cursed or something." "No, not anymore. Nobody think like that now. These people are sick for a reason. Like that boy was there. He is maybe born from very small family line, when cousin or brother and sister have children together. What? I asked. Is that what people do here? Inbreeding? No, not everyone. Not many. No, no, no way. But some countryside people, they are so stupid. They think it's healthy and makes them strong somehow. God damn, I muttered. That's some medieval shit right there. I know, man. We have so much to learn in this country about medicine and things. But we need schools for that. And the government won't let you have them, I thought to myself bitterly. The open-air marketplace was a maze of tall parasols and various sunshades, under which the vendors guarded their wares and parleyed with the bypassers. All kinds of trash was lying everywhere on the ground, and one had to be careful where to lay his foot so as not to fall over. Even a small cut could result in serious bacterial or viral infection here, I had been told. Besides this to watch out for, there was also the traffic that passed right through the tightly packed market square. Smoking beat-up cars with deafening car horns, as well as prehistoric motorcycles, some of which were holding as many passengers as 4 guys and a bleeding goat with its legs tied into a bundle. So, Mohammed asked after we stood in the middle of this sweaty pandemonium, what you want to buy? I suggested sun cream to begin with. My partner guided me to a pharmacy that was surprisingly modern in its design, with its glass doors and counters, behind which stood respectable-looking clerks dressed in spotless white coats. The electric fans were buzzing, a small old television was crackling in the corner, and the floor tiles beneath our feet gleamed with well-polished wax. But still, they did not have what I pined for so desperately. "How come they don't sell sun cream here?" I asked, as we exited the sterile premises back to the chaotic sand-colored scenery outside. "People don't need that here, man," Mohammed said, "and tourists always bring their own." "Yeah," I admitted, "the smart tourists do that." We went across a few blocks to another pharmacy, but it was the same story there as well. The clerk told us flatly that we wouldn't find sun cream elsewhere than in the city of Conakry, which at that moment was 150 kilometers from where we were. I was feeling like a proper idiot for not considering this possibility beforehand. "Don't worry," my partner soothed me as he led the way to a shaded little stone terrace that was crowded with men sitting on wooden benches and drinking tea from small plastic cups. "I have friends in Conakry. I asked them, so they sent that stuff here." "God bless you," I replied, and accepted a cup and a seat from the proprietor as we stepped underneath the cool of the shade. The older men who were present wore traditional long and loose dresses, while the younger guys seemed to prefer European fashion with jeans and t-shirts. There were no women present, but right next door to us there was a flock of them having their own lunch around a wooden table. Some of the younger ones stared and giggled at me with no reserve, which didn't make me uncomfortable, as it was such a preferable opposite to the disregard that Finns had towards each other. I waved my hand and grinned, feeling like an exotic animal of sorts. "I hope I'll learn more French soon," I said to my partner, watching as he exchanged a few good-natured words in Susu with the other patrons. "You just have to start talking," he told me, and finished his cup, throwing it in a wide cement rut that ran alongside the street. It was half full of garbage of different kinds, but not rotting organic matter, thankfully. "What is that ditch for?" I asked. "It's for rain season. That time it rains so damn hard the whole place is flooding. You can't even believe." "Oh yeah? What do the people do all that time?" "They just hide in their house," he said. "What you think? Nothing you can do for 3 or 4 months. Every place has some shit like that, you know. Finland has long winter, but here is that thing also. No place is perfect." Finishing our refreshments, we next went to look through the market stalls for clothes, and I was able to get a couple of pairs of shorts and shirts that cost about €6 apiece. Back in Finland, you could only buy clothes from the flea market with that price, so I was pleased with the findings, since they looked quite sharp as well. "This shit costs too much," my partner complained nevertheless, after trying to haggle with the vendors. "But I don't know the local prices anymore. I was away in Europe too long. And these guys see you and think that every white man is a goddamn millionaire." We then returned to the same tea house terrace, where my partner called a friend of his to come pick us up with his car. Not soon after, a dark-windowed sedan pulled up next to the cafe, and we went over to greet the driver, whose name also happened to be Mohammed. His warm friendliness immediately won me over as we got into his car, an old wreck that kept dying on us at every turn. But that mattered little, since Mohammed number 2 drove so patiently and never lost his cool in the heat of the traffic. "So," I said from the back seat in my horrible French to him, "what you do for work?" "I am a tour guide," he said. "I arrange treks for tourist groups that come to Kindia." "Yeah," my partner chimed in. "This guy, he takes photos too. He made one book of photography also." When I said I'd like to see a copy of this book, our driver told me to look into his bag at the back seat. I dived in and found the book, and after looking through the spellbinding pictures, I couldn't wait to witness all of it with my own eyes. "Amazing work," I told him. "This country is like a paradise." "And it's mostly undiscovered yet," he said. "Not many tourists know about Guinea yet. It has a lot of potential for development." I agreed, though the idea of turning the place into a gentrified resort for white slobs, drunks, and possibly even sexual predators, like had happened in the Gambia just across the border, I felt it was a threat as well as an opportunity. Instead of heading back to the hotel, we took a detour off the main road and entered a very affluent neighborhood, where a friend of Mohammed's lived in a beautiful Mediterranean-styled whitewashed house. Our host, Cisse, was a middle-aged gentleman who told me that he worked half of the year in Helsinki as a metro driver, and every winter returned back to his homeland with his savings. He even spoke perfect Finnish, and actually did so more beautifully than a native speaker, since it was much more colorful and expressive than the monotonous drone of natural-born Finns. Personally, I find my mother tongue to be the clumsiest and most vulgar lingo that I have ever come to hear. It can make Rambo sound like diarrhea. In order for the Finnish language to evolve further, foreign minds and tongues are needed to spice it up. But this will, due to the xenophobic nature of Finnish culture, take some time yet to happen. "You have worked out a wonderful way of life," I told our host as I watched his children play around his impressive SUV that was parked on the driveway. "I think so," he said, as we began to feast upon a fantastic dish of fish meatballs and rice that his wife brought over to us. "I have 2 houses here, and soon I will build a 3rd one for guests. You are welcome in all of them, my brother. One day I don't have to go back to Finland anymore and fight for my money." After lunch, he took us over to the roof terrace of his house, from where we could observe the picturesque region of forests and whitewashed buildings as far as the eye could see. "All my neighbors are military," he told us, "so I have protection 24/7. I don't ever have to worry myself that way." "Is it dangerous in Guinea then?" I asked him. "Well, nothing has ever happened to me, thank God. But there are bandits, yes. If you move alone at night, they can get you. So you should never do that. And they can rob the moto taxis and taxi cars also. It's safer to have your own car for that reason." He glanced at my partner, who grunted something with a ring of jealousy in his voice. "Have you changed any money yet?" Sisay asked. "Where did you do it?" Upon my telling about our adventure with the 2 hustlers, he bluntly told us that the bank would always give a better rate and that we should stick with that instead. My partner listened glumly like a schoolboy in detention. I could relate to his frustration with banks in general, as they were the heartless instigators of so many societal disasters, but I had to agree that getting ripped off by some wannabe Al Capones in the side street wasn't a very desirable alternative either. "Rasta, you want to have that SIM card now?" Mohammed asked me after we had descended from the roof. "That way you can have internet in your phone." "Sure thing," I said, though I realized that I hadn't missed being online at all during those few days. I hadn't seen almost any locals playing with their smartphones either. But this was perhaps because they didn't have one to begin with, or then they couldn't afford to have an internet connection at their constant disposal. Nevertheless, it had been pleasing to see people actually engaging in real-life interaction with each other and the world around them, instead of being shut up inside their screens. After thanking our kind hostess, we got back into Mohammed number 2's car and started our journey back. Sisay got into his shiny SUV and followed us all the way to the market street close to our hotel. Once there, we went inside a telecom provider's office. "It's a French company?" I asked Sisay as I waited for my turn. "Of course," he said, "and there's only one in the whole country." I wasn't surprised to hear that. It was probably even impossible for any other company to break that lucrative monopoly. Quite similar as to how in Finland, gambling and the sale of strong alcohols were controlled solely by the state. Sitting behind a small wooden table, the clerk marked down my passport number and personal details from my travel documents into a large folder. "Job?" he asked. "Musician?" I said with a grin, to which he didn't react but wrote it down assiduously, after which he handed me my new SIM card. "All right," my partner said after we left the place. "You want to go see Sabar now?" "What's that?" I asked. "A Sabar is a traditional wedding ceremony with music," Sisay explained. "You should go, Tom. It's very interesting. I have to run to do some things, so I can't come now, but we talk later, okay? Give me your New Guinean phone number." "So, what we do?" my partner asked after Cisse had driven off. "We go there, or what?" "Sure," I said. "I can't wait to see it." "You will like it," our tour guide friend added. "It's a very old Manding tradition. All my tourist groups love to see one every time." The sun was beginning to set as we got back inside Mohammed number two's car and resumed our journey. By the time we made it to the place of festivity across the town, night had already settled and the moon was again beaming above our heads. "Let's leave the car here," our friend said after numerous failures to keep the engine running while turning down some extremely bumpy roads. We were by then in the middle of a pretty congested stone house suburb that was completely unlit in the darkness of the night. "There's no electricity here?" I asked him as we got out of the car. "Yes, usually there is electricity, but right now there's a power outage going on." "Oh no," I said. "Does that happen often?" "Usually once a day at least, and it can last a few hours or sometimes the whole evening." "Also," my partner chimed in, "the government can cut power and phone connections so people can't talk about protests and things." "Good God," I said as we trotted down a sloping path by the aid of our smartphone flashlights. "And the people, do they have generators?" "Only those who have the money," was the predictable answer from our guide. "You know," my partner added, while almost tripping over a projecting rock and barely able to dance his way around to keep his footing, "it's that hydropower plant that does not work. The river don't have much water in dry season, but it's still better than when we was kids. Back then no one have electricity. Well, maybe super rich guys. Eh, Mohammed? Remember how bad it was when we were young?" "Yes," his namesake answered. "We used to have to gather firewood from many kilometers away so that our family could cook something. Just had to walk and walk, no other choice." That's crazy," I said while looking at the dark houses. "By the way, where are all the villagers?" "They're all at wedding party. What you think?" my partner said. "Everyone is invited. Always." I nodded and hoped to see such kind of communality in Finland too one day, where weddings as a rule were grim and sober ceremonies that were held in dark churches stinking with Luther's mad pathos. The mere memory of witnessing such sordid, hapless gatherings had made me detest the thought of matrimony. But now we were not going to a Protestant ceremony. Creeping through that pitch-dark village, I began to hear exuberant live music that sounded like two guitarists were playing alongside a group of traditional drummers. "You hear that?" my partner asked and pointed at 3 portable light fixtures that stood in the middle of an open sandy field. In their glare we saw a large group of colorfully dressed people dancing to the music that was booming out of 2 PA speakers standing on top of poles. Around this jubilantly jumping and smiling group were many plastic garden chairs that were occupied by a large number of people talking and laughing. "Oh yeah," I said. "Sounds awesome." We made our way nearer to the dancers who were gathered around the band and the lead singer. The spectacle of traditional dresses, jewelry, and dandy suits was like watching a rainbow up close. I turned my eyes to the band and noticed that there were in fact not 2 guitar players as I had presumed by the rapid flurry of musical notes. Instead, there was only one musician producing all those intertwining melodies by himself, as if he possessed two different brains and two pairs of hands. But it wasn't any freak of nature, but a smartly dressed man who was sitting with his electric guitar in the shadows behind the dramatically gesticulating singer and the 6 percussionists, some of whom were dancing and kicking their heels while banging away at their drums, djembes, dunduns, and sangbanis. "How do you like it?" our tour guide asked me as we stopped at the edge of the crowd to observe the married couple. These two smiling lovebirds were standing side by side in front of the band, accepting money and curtsies from the guests. In a wonderfully jubilant spectacle, each member of the crowd danced their way to the newlyweds, and after handing a wad of bills to them, made their way back to the group that was clapping and hooting encouragingly. "This is so wonderful," I shouted over the music. "It's a million times better than Finnish weddings. Those things are like funerals compared to this. How long is the band going to play, by the way?" "They have already played 2 hours," he told me, "but they will play until very late at night, maybe 4 more hours." "That's insane," I gasped, with a mixture of horror and admiration. It seemed more like professional sports than art. "I know this guy," my partner shouted and pointed at one of the drummers. "I go play with him a little bit." Our tour guide, meanwhile, ran into the center of the group to dance ecstatically with the others. I walked over next to the band and only nodded my head to the beat, since, like a true Finn, I found it hard to dance unless drunk. But these people, I noticed, were having the time of their lives while completely sober. There was no vulgar bellowing or emotionally unstable babbling like at parties back home, but only polite and yet unfettered festivity with joyous abandon that sprung from a finely tuned collective understanding and respect. People soon took notice of me, since I once again appeared to be the only white person on the scene. The reception was very warm, and I exchanged greetings all around. A young man came over with a plastic garden chair that he offered to me with a bright smile. I thanked him and took my seat underneath the crackling PA system that was powered by a small generator chugging away further back in the shadows. I stared at the guitarist and tried to figure out what notes he was playing. My attention didn't go unnoticed by him. During song breaks, he offered me the guitar with a smile, but I only shook my head and urged him to continue. No way was I trying to play like that. So instead, I just recorded the music on my phone, hoping to be able to figure out some parts of it back at the hotel. The vocal performances were highly spiritual and seemed to transport each singer into a sweating, shaking trance. Each vocalist left the microphone completely exhausted after all that high-pitched, incredibly vibrating and melodious singing that seemed to carry itself all the way to the moon right above us. But the guitar wizard didn't even break sweat in his green camo clothes and red cap, whipping up the tempo at times into a ridiculous frenzy that drove the drummers to the limits of their stamina. It was indeed the guitar player who directed the performance. The singers began their songs after his melodic cues and followed his fluctuating calls with vocal responses. And whenever they had to catch their breath, and wipe sweat from their faces, this incessantly smiling Orpheus would launch into an instrumental segment that would have made almost any Western guitar shredder soil their jeans. My partner, meanwhile, hammered at the djembe drum with all his might until he was soaked with perspiration and his eyes stood wide open with energy. After he finally finished this musical workout, he struck up a conversation with one of the drummers and brought him over to meet me. "Happy arrival," the man said to me in French, and almost crushed my hand with his calloused, rock-hard paw that spoke volumes of his dedication towards his instrument. The djembe is one of the most demanding percussion instruments, since it must be played with hands instead of sticks. It also had an important solo instrument in Manding music due to the variety of sounds and rapidity of rhythmical phrases that a skilled player can produce with it. As a matter of fact, the djembe had been used as a tool for long-distance communication in the old days, as its sound could travel immense distances over open terrain. "How have you enjoyed Guinea this far?" the drummer asked me while retying his impressive dreadlocks into a bundle to the back of his head, from where they had escaped during this feverish performance. "It's amazing," I said, and couldn't help to add, "but it is strange to me that I don't see many people with your hairstyle. I was thinking everyone looks like Mohammed here." It was true. Against all my expectations, this particular young man was the only person with dreadlocks that I'd seen anywhere besides my partner, who took the cue to answer me. "Rasta style is not normal here." "Yeah," his friend added. "More in Sierra Leone and Ivory Coast, but not here." "Me and this guy," Mohammed explained and slapped the grinning, brawny musician on the back, "we used to run around this town when we was kids. We always get into trouble for our rastas." "That's right," the other said with a laugh. "We had to hide them inside our hats. If the big guys saw them, they pulled them off." He demonstrated the frightening idea by tugging at Mohammed's locks playfully. "God damn," I said. "They tore them right off your heads?" "That's right, man. It hurt like hell." "Why would they do something like that?" I asked. "Because they think it's devil things," Muhammad explained. "Against Muslim religion, you know." "Ooh, I hope it's not like that in here anymore," I mumbled, while observing the people around us, almost waiting for a fundamentalist patrol to burst through the crowd with whips and Qurans in their hands. "No, man," Muhammad said. "Times change, and now people have more open mind. Anyhow, we jump now? Back to hotel?" Sure. It's been a long day." And so we started our way back in jumps and stops under the orange-hued moon that was emanating a white halo across the black sky. This strange visual effect was probably the result of thick smoke that was rising from small bushfires here and there in the dark ground around us. "Lots of fires here," I said to our driver, and pointed to a group of people who were trampling the sooty ground and beating at the glowing embers with canvas bags. Some of them wandered in the midst of large trees with the aid of their cell phone flashlights, resembling large phosphorescent insects from a distance. "Yeah, those people started the fires," he said, "in order to keep the undergrowth from growing too big. If that would happen and it would catch fire, all hell would break loose." "Makes sense," I said. "There's no fire brigade here, right?" "No way. The nearest one is in the center of Kindia, and it's very small. Waving my hand to these strangers who greeted us as we drove past them in the dark night, I could not help but wonder how the first Europeans had reacted to this place hundreds of years ago. The story goes that the imperialists had first come upon a riverside with a group of native women washing themselves in the stream. With persistent gestures, the white men had tried to find out from the locals what the name of that particular region was. The women had misunderstood the question and had replied in their own language that the section of the river was a place of ablutions reserved for women. Now, in the Susu language, the word woman is Guinea. And so the explorers had caught that word and decided to call the entire territory Guinea. Soon after that, English gold coins were named guineas as well, since much of the gold used to make them originated from that region. The rest is bloody history of usurpation and slavery that could freeze one's blood if fully understood. My brain addled with the mysteries of the past, we returned to our air-conditioned rooms and wished good night to our kind guide and driver, who pocketed a bit of gas money from my partner and then headed back home to his family. I fell on my bed with a nagging question. Was I also just intruding there, a white devil in a place where he was not supposed to be with his filthy European money? "Good night, Monsieur Tom," my partner hollered at me through the door. "I hope you had a good day here in Kindia." "I sure did," I answered. "Thank you, brother." "Thank you for coming here," he said, and went singing his way to his own bedroom. And with those words, my doubts disappeared.